Hello. Now we'll talk about how do we handle the exceptions. So the raising the exception we have not discussed yet, right? In a more detail, but we have used this in a code, right? To raise an exception, we can simply say raise, and then we'll type the error name, and then we'll pass the custom message, right? So when we write this, this will raise the exception. This will raise the specific error, right? Right now, again, like if this would have happened in the module, right? So this entire module, this entire program would have broke, right? But this is just in the Jupyter notebook that this entire program is not breaking because our Jupyter notebook is handling this, right? Now let's try to let's try a very simple handler first, right? So here we're saying try, then here we are specifically raising the value error. Then we say except value error. If the value error happens, then here we are printing the object of this value error, right? So this would be ex would be the object of the value error. We're just trying to print what we'll get. Here we are getting the custom message. So here, whatever the message you will type, that message will be printed over here, right? And actually, you can also pass the multiple argument. Like over here we pass the custom message, and the second message. You can pass as many argument as you want. That would be the printed if you print the object. Here you can see this. Or you can also print the REPR representation of the exception. So instead of the just printing the object, that means instead of calling the string representation, if you type the REPR of exceptions and then you'll print it, it will print this entire error. So it will print this the name of the class and the message as well. Right? So this entire error has been printed. Now, when we guard our code with the try block, we can handle different exception types in a separate exception handler, right? So here, consider that we have this function one, which just raise the value error, print bad values. Then we say try. Here we are executing the function. It will definitely raise the value error. Then we say except value error. Then we will print this handling value error. Then here we are handling another exception. We'll say except index error, then it will print handling the index error. So here we are trying to handle a two type of exceptions, value error and index error. Whatever the exception happens over here, that will be printed. We know that the value error will happen. Let's print it. Here we see that the handling a value error and the bad value. But here, what if a function calls the index error, right? And then when we run the entire functions, this time, first it will check whether this exception is a value error or not, right? So like first it will check whether this whatever the exception hacker whether this is like type of value error or not. Then it will try to check whether this is type of index error or not. If this matches, then it will print it, right? So if you do not handle the exceptions in the value error, like over here, right? So again, like consider this example over here. Like here we have this case code, like we are trying our, so here is the code which is running our value error. But in the first line, if you are handling the broader exception, this is like we are just typing, we are handling the broader exceptions, and then we are handling the value error. We know that this error is raised by the value error, but because at first, if you are handling the error with the broader exceptions, and because this value error is a child of exception class, so this will handle this value error exception. This will never come to this value error exceptions, and that's the reason we say if you want to handle the broader exception, always try in the last. Let's try this code. Here we say that handling exception value error, right? So it is a handling the exception class. It is handling through the exception class. It is still the value error, but it is handling through the exception class. It is not handling through the value error, right? If we write code exception handler and none of them matches the exceptions, so this error will propagate it to the end of the code. Like over here, we are just trying to raise the key error, but first we are handling the value error. Then the second, we are handling the index error. We are not handling the key error. So what will happen? This exceptions will be not handled. It will propagate it throughout the code. We'll see that here none exception was handled out of 2, but here we are getting the error as a key error. Right? Now I'll talk about the finally block. So the finally block is guaranteed to execute always, whether exception is raised or not, whether it is handled or not. Right? So when we say try, we are raising the value error, we are accepting value error. That means here we are handling the value error, and then we have the finally block. In the finally block, we are just printing running finally. So though the error has been captured, right? Though the error has been handled by the value error, it will always print the finally block code. Let's try to run this. Here we can see that handling value error. This print is happening, but it is also printing the running finally, right? If no exception was occurred, right? If no exception was occurred, consider this example over here. Here we, in the try block, we're just saying pass. That means we are not executing. This try block will not have any error. So this except block will not execute. It will not run. But this finally block will always run. Even though there is no block, even though there is no error, finally block will run. Let's try to run this, right? And with the unhandled exception like this, here we are raising the value error, we are handling the index error. So we know that this error will not be handled, but still it will print the finally block. Let's see that. Here we have this running finally. So finally block will always execute, right? If there are no exception handler defined, whether or not the exception is raised, this finally block will always execute. Like here, we have this try block, and then we have the finally block, right? Here the finally block will execute. Here we are handling the error. Here in the try block, we are raising the error, but we are again executing the finally block. Finally block will always execute, even though the error is raised, even though there is no accept clause. In other case, the accept clause, on the other hand, is a block that queues if no exception occurred. That means if there is no error happening in the try block, this except block will not execute, right? Let's try to do this. Here when we run this, you can see now, but again, here we are running the try block, but if this will not happen, then this else clause will execute, and we are seeing this no exceptions occurred. Let's try to raise the error and handle the error. If we are raising the error and if we are handling it, then this else block will not execute. Here, let's do this. We are saying value error. We are not saying no exception occurred. So this else clause is somehow pretty much useful, right? Here, we are raising the error, but not handling that error. So what will happen in the else block? In the else block, it has not executed. So that means that we have raised the error, we have not handled it. So this else block will also not execute. But some of the users omit this else block, right? And write this simple line of code. Consider this code should be done. This is the proper code. But some people try this code. That means it omit the else block and simply print no exception occurred. Consider this. We are running pass. We are handling here in this block. No exception occurred because we know there is no exception has done. But when we do this, again, the same line of code we are getting. But let's say that if you raise the error, here we are raising the value error, right? And we are handling the value error, then it's print the value error, else block will not print. But consider this output over here. We are raising the error, we are handling the value error, but This will also print no exception occurred. We know that here we are printing because of the error occurred, but because we have omitted the else part, it says that no exception occurred. This omitting the else, without else, and with else is not the same code, right? Now, try statement can be nested, right? In fact, here we have the code of nested try block. Let's see that. So first, let's see that, like first, let's try to create the object, right? So suppose we want to create a list of person object from the deserialized JSON object. For that, we need to import the JSON. Here is the JSON data we have, and you can load the JSON data to deserialize it. We can see simply say JSON.load. This will give you the data. This is the data we have. Right? Now what we want is, now we want to get the list of persons object and iterate through the properties age, city, age, all these are the properties for each person in the data, and set them directly to the person instance. So we want to create a list of person object and set these attribute as a person instance. Like set these as an attribute of the person instance. First, the city attribute is going to be problem, since person only has two slots. Like over here we have this person and it has only two slots, name and the age. So we can only assign as an attribute name and age. We cannot assign the city, right? So this will give you the attribute error. Second, Guido age, this age is valid, is not valid value. So it is going to be value error now. So this will give you the two error. Let's try to run this. So here we have the class person, we have the init, we have the age, setter and the getter value, right? And then we have the REPR. We have the slots which only can have name and the age attribute. Let's run this. Now, the way we want to handle this is that if some extra attribute, like over here, the city was the extra attribute, exist, we want to ignore them. But if the value is of the wrong type, like here, we have the age as an unknown, it's a wrong type value. We do not want to create the object in our list. So if we have the wrong type, we do not want to create the object. So this Guido object will not create. Let's see that, how we can do this. So we have the class over here, right? So here we have this person list. We are taking data.items. This is the dictionary we have. This is the dictionary we have. So we are taking the items, right, in the name and the attribute. Now first we'll try to create the object of the person, right, with the name. We are trying to create the object of the person with the name here, because this only take the name as an value, right? Age can be defined later on. Here we are getting the object, and now this attribute is still is again the dictionary. So we are taking this attribute in a loop, and now we are saying that we are extracting the name and the value of the attribute, and now we are trying to set the attribute of that object as a name and the value. So we are saying set attribute name and the attribute value. So this object will have this attribute name and this as an attribute value. But except attribute error, if this attribute error happens, now when this attribute error will happen in the city, in the second time when we create the object for the city, if this happens, so it will print ignoring attribute name dot attribute name and the attribute value. So it will ignore this attribute, right? So inside this try block, we again have the for loop, and then we again having the try block. But in this try block, if value error happens, like here, when we'll pass unknown as a name, unknown as an age, here we're passing unknown as an age, right? Because here, when we try to set it, here we have said that if the age is greater than equal to 0 and it is integer, then we'll set age, otherwise it will raise the value error. So when we try to set the age as an unknown, which is a string, it will give you the value error, right? So when we try to set it as a value error, here we're printing the data of person name contains the invalid attribute value, right? So this will happen. For first, it will try to do this, right? So when we try to run this, when we try to set the age value over here, right? So it will give you the value error. So if not attribute error, if the value error happens, so it will handle through this try block, right? And then it will say else. If this happens, then it will not add that object to this person list. If there is no error happens, then we'll add that. So if this error happens, then we will add that person. But if this value error happens, then we'll not add that object to the person list. And here we are printing the all the list. We can see that first we are getting ignoring attribute. So this city attribute has been ignored. Then we are data of the person Guido contains invalid attribute value age. So it has not been added. And now in the list, we have the two objects, right? So here we are calling different try and except block at a different level. Now let's see different example. Here we want to create a simple function to transform 0 and the 1 into these values. 0 will be converted to 0, F, false. And the 1 will be converted to 1, true, 1, true, and the true, right? So this is how we want to convert. So for that, let's create a function. Here we are creating a function as a convert integer. This will check if the integer value belongs to the integer data type. If it is not, so it will raise type error. And if value is not from 0 and 1, if value is not in this set 0 and 1, so it will raise the value error as well. This will raise the type error and this will raise the value error. Otherwise, we'll return the boolean of the value. Here we have the function called convert string. It will check whether the object is not a type of string, so it will raise the type error, right? Now here we are doing the case fold for the case insensitivity, and now we're checking if the value in this 0f false. So this case fold will kind of convert the string into the lower cases, right? So here we're checking if val in 0f false, if it belongs to this, so it should return true. If val in 0 is 1t true, it should return true, else it will return the value error, right? Let's run this function again. And now we have again created another class called conversion error, which inherited from the exception class, right? Now we have the function called make boolean. We are trying the code. In this code, we are again trying the code as a convert integer. So first we are trying to do the convert integer. If the type error happens in the convert integers, then again we are trying to convert that type to a string. So if that is, so here the type error will happen if it is not integer. So here, let's see that. If it is not integer, so it will raise type error. Then we'll try this code converting to a string. If again the type error will happen, now when this type error will happen, if it is not string, right? So it will raise the type error. If the type error will happen, so it will raise conversion error. So it will raise this error, this class custom error, and it will print this cannot convert it to boolean and except. So in these code we have only handled the type error, but now if this all fails, so that means we have the value error. If that happens, then we'll raise this conversion error, right, our custom error, and now else it will return b, right? We have this function. Now let's try to convert the value. Here we have these value true 0 t false 10. So this 10 will not be converted to a boolean. It will give you this. So when we convert to, it will give you the value error, right? It will give you the value error. This ABC will also not be converted because this will be give you the because this is a string, right? This is a string, and in the conversion string here, it will raise this value error, right? Because it is not belong to the specific string, and then in the float, it will raise you the type error, right? So here we are seeing that first we are passing true, so true return, 0 false return, t true return, false false return. Again, all these three has not been converted to a value, right? So this is how we can handle the exception at a various level with a different try and except block, right? And this is it. Thank you very much.